Wait, your mom doesn't watch your stuff?
No, dude. I mean, maybe she does. Maybe she has a burner account.
I made a short film in under 24 hours. I produced it, shot it, colored it, and exported it all in less than 24 hours. So I didn't really do this just for the fun of it, because usually when you're fighting against time, the quality of the work or short film isn't always the best. But this has to do with a challenge that I set for myself in the beginning of this year, was to do at least one short film a month. And in January last month, I took this challenge and I wanted to see just how much I could possibly do in one day. Because I think a lot of times I limit myself with the time that I have. So this is a short film that's actually already finished. It was my last upload. It was a very personal short film that is loosely based on my life and my experiences in growing up in an Asian American household. So if you haven't watched it, go check it out after this video. In downtown LA, after 3 hours or a little less, we wrapped up. I went home back to my apartment and I shot some night scenes for the short film that only took about an hour and a half. And then after that, I still had some time in the evening. And that's when I colored and edited and made all the cuts that I needed to in DaVinci Resolve. So for a quick ear check, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I shoot on a Pixie 6K, and that's the camera that I use for this short film. And for the lens, I use a Contact Zeiss 28mm lens, which is slowly becoming my go-to lens. So the most time-consuming part of all of this was probably in post-edit, when I had all my clips and my audio inside of DaVinci Resolve, and that's where the real fun begins, is when you have to edit, cut, match, and color and all that fun stuff. For the color grading, I was able to use Dehancer for pretty much all of the color that you see in that film. And I really wanted that gritty, textured. I didn't want a clean look because I feel like grainy, filmic look supported the emotional storytelling that I was going for. So let's hop on my computer and I'll show you one of the clips and see how I used Dehancer. All right, so let's take a look at this footage that I shot on the Pixie 6K. This was shot on BMD Film Gen 5. So that's like their log for Blackmagic. Obviously you can see this is in log. And I'm going to just zoom it in a little bit just to make it fill the frame. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys how I would edit this using Dehancer. So I'll put this into this node, and really it's like a one node trick. You don't really need to add a bunch of other nodes for different effects. That's only if you want to, but Dehancer has a lot of options that you could use to just make it work within that one node. So let's go to source and we'll go to choose camera, and then we'll go to Blackmagic design. And I shot it on the Pixie 6K using Film Gen 5. And right away, before we do anything else, I can see that the footage is a little dark. So I'm gonna increase the exposure a bit. The temperature, it's a little too blue for my liking. And also the tint as well. So I wanna make it look like that it's closer to the evening nighttime, but also I don't want to make the skin look too blue or washed out. Okay, so next we have the film profile, and as you can see, there's a lot of choices, and there's not really like what is the best film profile for each footage, because each footage is going to be different. The lighting, the environment, the colors will be different. So you really have to experiment and pick which one would be the best. So if I just go down the list, there's some film profiles that I've never even heard of. Like Cinestill is pretty popular, and there's some Fujicolor and Fujifilm Instax. A lot of different options. And you know, there's the more popular ones like the Portra, the Vision 3, 250D that people actually shoot on actual film. But for this one, I want it to be pretty soft, and because it's already pretty dark, maybe I'll go with the Portra 400. And it's not really too heavy on the effects. It's not too saturated. That way I can play around with it a little bit more and do what I want. So this push and pull EV is It's pushing or pulling the film during the exposure development. So if you push, it's underexposed. If you pull, it's overexposed. But all that to say, basically what this does is if you push it, there's more contrast, brighter mids, harsher highlights, and it's good for like low light scenes. But if you decide to pull it, which I'm going to do in this case, there's lower contrast, creamier highlights, and a little bit more shadow detail. So I'm just going to pull it a little bit. And then here for the film developer, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a contrast boost if you want to add more contrast. Obviously, this is too much, but I will add just a little bit. And then the color boost, I like to use this to add in a little bit more pop in the colors. So this expand feature I use quite often. It brings down the highlights and the white points more, and it brings out a lot more of the moodier image and colors. So that's why I like to use it, because a lot of the scenes that I shoot is more emotional and moody. So here for the white point, you could make the whites a little bit more moodier, darker, and this black point is pretty self-explanatory. It controls all the shadow and black in your frame. And the next one, print. So the print is finishes that your film development can go through. So when you add these different prints, what I noticed is the effect that it has on the final image. It is very, very heavy and very saturated a lot of times. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If I'm doing, let's say, like a flashback scene that I want it to feel very saturated and very powerful and very bold, then yeah, I might use, some of these features. But for me, 90% of the time, I won't use the prints, because I think for me, I like a more natural color grade, and this adds a pretty heavy effect on the grade itself. And yeah, there might be other ways to use this print that I'm not aware of, which I'm very open to learning, but that's just how I grade it. And this color head is a pretty good tool to adjust the color. So obviously in this frame, when I look at it, it could be a little subjective, but I think I could use a little more warmth here. And for the magenta and green, then make it a little bit more color to the skin tone, as you can see here. And then these are the shadow tones. You could change the color for just the shadow tones. And I want to add a little bit more, like I said, yellow and warmth to it. And the mid-tones, same thing. Highlights. Okay, see how the white part going down the middle of the frame, if I control the highlights, it gets colder and warmer, as you see. I'll make that a little bit warmer as well. Okay, so in my opinion, the three best features that Dehancer has is the film grain, halation, and the bloom effect. A lot of other apps, they try to mimic these three, but I think Dehancer got it down in terms of making it look organic and also realistic and very subtle at the same time. So for film grain, I don't like to use any of the presets. I like to have control for the customizations of each setting. So for the size, I usually keep it between, like, I would say 8 to 15, around there. And what's really important to know is these settings are all different for what the footage shows. So if your footage has a lot of shadow, or it's very bright or very dark, and let's say there's some footage that you want to stylize in a more heavy fashion, then all these will change. So it depends on your footage, and there's no like one click setting for everything. For the amount, I like to keep it somewhere between 15 to 20, maybe a little bit more sometimes. And for the film resolution, I don't think many people understand what this really is. So basically, film resolution, if you put it lower, it looks more chunky and smeared, almost like 16 millimeter. And the higher you increase it, I like to keep it around the 60, 70 range. It adds a little bit more cleanness, and it's more organic and film-like, almost closer to 35 millimeter. And for the shadows, midtones and highlights, again, you would just need to adjust this for your footage. And obviously you don't want to make it too crazy. I like to keep it very subtle. And usually the highlights are a little bit more increased than the midtones and shadows. And the chroma, you want to keep it low unless you're trying to do something specific. And for the fill type, I always like to keep it at negative to give it a more realistic look. And if you see the footage here, I would say it's a little bit too much. So I want to tone it down even more. So even in the midtones and the shadows and also the highlights. And this is the before and this is the after. So I'm introducing some grain, not doing overkill, but just enough to give it a little bit more character. And again, I like the very subtle look. I don't like to use too much grain. So this is pretty good. For halation, I like to just keep it at 35 millimeter, and you can amplify where you see fit. And basically what halation does is around bright sources of light, it adds that little red flare, as you can see. And again, I don't like to use too much. I think that is not bad. And a bloom effect is a popular effect that people like to use. And obviously, if you do it too much, it looks like my friend here is an angel. Looks like he's going to ascend into heaven, which you don't want. And I don't like to really use too much bloom. Here's a before and after. I think that's pretty good. Now, if you look below that, the film damage and the so all of these other settings I don't really use too often. Maybe I'll use film damage, which basically introduces like micro flickers, a little bit of gate instability where your footage shakes a tiny bit, and kind of like dust and scratches that you'll see on some film footage. And film breath is pretty much simulates the subtle frame to frame movement in real film, like the scale, position, and framing. It's just like the movement of the image basically. And yeah, that's pretty much how I use this. I'm going to add a little bit more tweak to this before I think that it looks good. So I'm just going to add some finishing touches to this. So after all that, this would be the final footage that you see. And I'm not mad at it. It's sort of the look I was going for. And yeah, that's pretty much how I incorporate Dehancer into my footage. So the whole purpose of this video and also this short film that I made was I wanted to prove to myself what's possible in one day. Because I feel like I always make excuses and I always tell myself, oh, I don't have time, I don't have the people, I don't have the resources. If you're like me and you're wondering, how do I make short films? How do I upgrade in my filmmaking? And how do I get better in my skills? You have to get used to working with people. You have to have just bigger ideas and try some things that may be new, try some things that may be scary to you, and you will surprise yourself just how much you could do and how much you could get done. So if you have some time, please go watch the short film that is connected to this video. And that's pretty much it for me today. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.